Alright, what is going on, guys? So we are hanging out here with Nick. We're gonna be doing the clutch on Ashley's Mustang because, as you guys saw in the last video, it tore itself to shreds, which I'm pretty sure we're gonna have to make some bets on what the clutch looks like. I think it's ripped in half, clutch disc.
I'll say that there's maybe not ripped in half, but there's clutch material blocking the pressure plate from engaging and disengaging.
Yeah, because right now the clutch pedal is completely on the floor. It is fully engaged, so if you start it in gear, it obviously drives, and yeah. So we're gonna go get cracking this thing. We're gonna show you guys the process of installing the Mantic twin disc clutch on this. If you haven't already, make sure you like Florida Auto Surgeon's page. That's Nick's page. If you need any work done, he's in the Central Florida area. You can bring your car down here and he can work on it.
Yep, we do all sorts of installations from wild to mild and general repair.
Yeah, we actually installed the Whipple 2.9 liter supercharger here, and we actually did that right before Mustang Week. Actually finished the night before and went off to Mustang Week, and it was perfect. So let's go ahead and get cracking on this thing. I already removed the shifter, shift knob. You basically just twist it off and remove the lock nut. We had a Ford Racing one on this one. Now we're gonna get it up in the air and start tearing it apart. Alright, so we're gonna get cracking here. First thing we're gonna do is remove the exhaust. We're gonna do that by removing the lamps right there, two right there, and then we're gonna remove this whole one piece because we actually had the catback portion of the X-pipe welded here, and then we unbolt this side right here, the cat connection, and unbolt it here at the factory location, since this cat is going to stay a part of the manifold. So these are the bolts we're removing at the front of the cat, and then we remove this one over here. That way we can remove the cat back all in one piece. I believe that's the way Ford intended for this exhaust to come off. And when stuff doesn't come off, you hit it with fire. Cherry red, that's the way to make it come off. Ready? Ooh, easy. So we actually had to cut this bolt right here on this side. It was coming off uneven on this car for some reason, and it's very strange. And then it looks like we're gonna remove the starter and then try to get the top bolt, and hopefully we have better luck with that one. All right, and starter is out. We're gonna try to get at that other bolt there and get the exhaust off the car, then the drive shaft, shifter, cross member, bell housing bolts, and then it should be coming out. All right, so after some struggling, we ended up having to get the catalytic converter bolt up through the top, fed a long extension down, and we're able to get that off. It was a super big pain, but now we should be able to pull the exhaust off. All right, so we just pulled the factory catback off. Obviously that stays with the cat. Normal catbacks connect right there, since Ashley's the stock. This is the same way that a stock catback works. We just had this piece welded in and the muffler delete welded in. Now we're ready to remove the drive shaft, remove the cross member, drive shaft bolts, shifter, and get this thing out of here. This and this were a super big pain, and yeah, so let's keep going. All right, now I'm gonna remove the factory drive shaft, remove it from there, and remove it from there, and then we'll be able to lower it. And then there's two bolts right here that hold that in place, and then we'll be able to drop that onto the ground. That I did something. We have the transporter. We're going to bolt the cross member bolt, and that will allow us to go ahead and lower down the transmission. Now the trans come down. Alright, so we just removed the 7 bell housing bolts. It was fairly easy. They weren't very tight on this car. And by not very tight, I mean they came off with a little bit of force and nice and easy. So we got all those out. We have one in over there. You always keep one in until you're ready to pull the transmission out. We got to pull the clutch line off and make sure all of our lines are clear. Our shifter is clear from the car, so we're almost ready to pull it. Yep, bell housing bolts out. Clutch line is off. Should be ready to pry it out. You ready to see some destruction of the clutch?
Oh yeah.
I think it's gonna be, I think half of the material is just gonna fall off of it.
You're gonna have to go down if you're hitting up here on.
I see clutch. I don't see any sleeve cylinder leaks. How that's supposed to come off?
Did it just slide off?
Yeah.
It's broken.
It's broken?
It's supposed to come on that easy.
No.
it might
It's one piece.
You ready to see if this thing's blown or if it was just the slave? This is definitely burnt up because she was slipping. All right, so trans is out. We're gonna pull the stock clutch out and see if it's messed up. I don't know, I'm kind of still betting that it's messed up.
I'm sure it is.
All right, moment of truth. Is it gonna be messed up?
No. There's some clutch discs.
I knew it. See, I called it. I knew it would be broken like that. I called it, right? That's what these stock clutches do. They get worn down and then they separate.
Yeah.
That's worse than the Cobra. Yeah, I knew it. That is what happens. 825 horsepower crank on a stock MT82 clutch and 45,000 miles. Yeah, so the slave blew out at the same time. Or, I mean, it's possible it could have been
due to it hitting it.
Yeah. So both were blown, and we got a new one right there, the Mantic. That's a little broken. All right, so now we are gonna get ready to assemble the Mantic twin disc clutch. First thing we do is put the flywheel and put the bolts through the side, and basically we assemble this one on the car, where on the Cobra, we put the flywheel on the car, assemble it off car, and then put it together. So this one's a little bit different. I think I like this way better. We'll see which way Nick likes it. But after this, Nick's gonna be a pro at putting these Mantics in. All right, Nick's gonna be putting the new slave cylinder that came with the Mantic. It's just a Ford OEM unit. You got that bolted in.
Yeah.
So the first step on assembling the MT82 Mantic clutch is sliding all the bolts through to the back. They sit in the groove so they won't spin. It's important when putting this up into the car, make sure they're always seated to the back, that way they don't spin. All right, so first we're gonna put the flywheel on the car with all the bolts on the back. Lift it up into the car and get one of the bolts and get it lined up. The next step is to slide the drive blocks onto the bolts, making sure that all the bolts stay inside the groove on the back of the flywheel. Then these also have grooves on the front of the flywheel, right? That way those don't move when this all gets tightened up together.
Yep.
So we're gonna mount our disc with flywheel side facing flywheel. That one says flywheel side, right?
Yeah.
Put that in there. Clutch alignment tool. That should be all the way in the pilot bearing. So we put the pressure plate side outwards, and now we're gonna put this disc up and into the car, using the alignment tool to keep everything straight. Now we're gonna grab the second
Make sure
plate.
all these are straight.
Make sure all the drive blocks and bolts are still on the back side of the flywheel. All right, now we have the next pressure plate, or intermediate plate. And now the pressure plate. All right, so we got all the bolts on there. It's important to make sure that all the bolt heads are seated firmly in the groove in the back, and all the drive blocks are in the groove on the back side of the flywheel to make sure that you don't drive these bolts in. These don't have to be too tight. It's an inch pound or is it a foot pound?
20 foot-pounds.
Yeah, it's 20 foot-pounds, so it's tight but not like driving in crazy tight. So Nick's gonna bring these in, and then he's gonna torque these to the specs. Nick has a mirror so that he can see what the top of that looks like. Make sure the drive blocks are all perfectly in line in the groove on the flywheel, and the bolts are all in the proper spot on the back side of the flywheel. And according to the instructions, it says to torque to 33 Newton meters, which is 25 foot-pounds?
24 and change, but yeah.
24, about 25. Alright, so we have the completed clutch assembled on the car. We're prepared to put the transmission in the car. We got our new slave cylinder, Ford OEM slave cylinder there. And we got that greased up and the ends greased up in there, so that way this slides in and everything engages very nicely. Alright, and now we're ready to lift the trans up and back into the car. Trans jack makes it nice and easy, get the perfect angle, make sure we go nice and straight into the clutch. That's why doing a transmission on your back sucks. It's not getting it out, it's getting it back in.
Any of that mess, actually.
Yeah. Then a lot of people end up damaging the forks and everything. Alright, and we have the transmission up and into the car, and just like with the Cobra, we're going to use 2 bolts to guide it in, and that self-aligns itself nice into place. You want to do a nice guide in, that way it doesn't crush any of the splines. Alright, and we have all 7 bolts tightened up for the transmission. Nick's gonna put the clutch line on, then we're gonna get things plugged in, mount the trans back up to the car, and get everything back in the car. Yeah, feels good. So before we put everything back together, we just wanted to make sure it was holding hydraulic pressure, which it is. Pedals going all the way floor, coming back, no leaks. We added a little fluid up top in the brake reservoir. Back up in the air. Alright, so we're making progress. Nick's putting the 2 shifter bolts. We got everything plugged in here besides obviously the exhaust. We're gonna put the drive shaft in next. And I have markings there. Nick also, we had to cut off one of the bolts for the exhaust here. So we have a set of a nut and stud to go with this. The factory studs broke. Although you said the Ford manual says to discard the old ones once they're removed.
Still, you shouldn't have to have them come off. They stripped coming off, like they were on there. I heated them up with a torch, PV blasted them, went back and forth working the bolt, and it still stripped it.
Yeah.
It's just junk, you know?
And this is a 2016. It's crazy.
Yeah. They get cheaper than whatever they get. I'm gonna get those bolts started.
Alright, just getting the drive shaft in and get this tightened up.
To pump up more and bleed out on your way home. The more you drive it, the better it'll get.
Alright guys, so we just wrapped up the clutch install. I'm going to talk to you guys when I get back. I'm going to be doing a crank relearn. It's just going to use the Whipple flare tool, which is our tuner currently, since we have the Whipple supercharger. You can also use an HP Tuner's N gauge or an SCTX4 to do a crank relearn, as well as a London gauge now has crank relearn. I'm going to use the Whipple flare tool to do that. It's important to do that after you change out the flywheel. I'm gonna head home and I'll check back in with you guys, give you guys first impressions on driving this thing. As you guys know, I've driven the one on an MT82 many times, so nothing really surprising here. Alright guys, so there you have it. the clutch is done on Ashley's car. I don't have it pulled in the garage right now, but I just wanted to wrap up this video. If you guys have any questions, leave them down below on the Mantic clutch. We went with the 9000 series clutch. Part numbers up here on screen. If you are interested in this, hit up Jeff at manticclutchusa.com. He has been awesome to us. Obviously, we just did 2 clutches, Mantic clutches in the cars, and we also worked with Mantic before when we did the clutch on Scott's car. These clutches are great, and I cannot wait to get these cars out on the drag strip. Obviously, we're already putting street miles on. Ashley's car has 300 miles now because it's a few days later. This one has 700 miles, which 300 or 400 of that is highway, so this still needs another about 200 miles before it's fully broken in. And these are a ceраmetallic material, so it's very important that they get broken in properly. So in theory, these things should be good for 1,000 horsepower at the crank, somewhere around 825 wheel horsepower. I plan to run somewhere around 700 wheel horsepower down the line on the Cobra, and Ashley's car is going to be right around 700 wheel horsepower. So make sure you slap that like button down below, leave a comment. Look forward to our track videos. I know our schedule makes it really hard to get out to the track, but look forward to those. Turdzilla update coming soon, because I know everyone's going to comment about that. But anyway, guys, make sure you slap that like button, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you guys next time.